Good afternoon. Thank you all. We went past it already. So I'm Mike Gaines, Jim Honeycutt.
Jim Honeycutt.
Jaime stole my opening paragraph, and I'm going to jump through. But that is a continuing theme is jackhenry.dev. You've heard how prominent it plays a part in all of what we're doing, even from Ben in his talk last night. We have two primary customers, if you will. We have users and we have contributors. And so in developer relations, among multiple things that we are responsible for is the providing services to cover those. We are responsible for the framework and the kind of the stewardship of the site itself. So today we want to show you how that works behind the scenes and a couple of exciting new features and things that we've rolled out. So take it away, Jim.
Awesome. I'm really excited to show you guys this stuff today. I know it's UX and you might think it's boring, but we've done some really cool stuff with this. So we've been talking about jackhenry.dev both days now. And what we're here to talk with you about today is the journey we've been through with the user experience for jackhenry.dev. And when we talk about user experience, a lot of times people think about colors, fonts, spacing. Chris was talking about buttons yesterday. That's what we normally think about with user experience. But with a developer portal like jackhenry.dev, I tend to measure user experience in terms of efficiency. How quickly can we get an answer to a question that's in your head to where you have code, samples to work with, something to actually solve your problem? So efficiency is what we're really focusing on here. Now, when we talk about jackhenry.dev, there's really two parts to that. There's the developer dashboard. That's where you can go provision a new developer user, create test users, set up plugins, things like that. And then there's the developer documentation. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is the documentation side of all of that. When we look at all of the documentation that's in jackhenry.dev, I like to call it the .dev docuverse. It's a name I came up with. I'm trying to get it to catch on, so help me out with that. Nobody else seems to be calling it that but me. But I call it the docuverse because it's massive. There are 6,700 different documents in all of this documentation spread across 16 different documentation sites. All of these sites are powered by the Hugo static site generator. And we have created our own technical documentation platform on top of Hugo called JHDocs that powers all of these sites. So what we have today is pretty cool, but it wasn't always like that. We've been on a journey with jackhenry.dev. I know I've personally been on a journey with jackhenry.dev for the last 5 years. And when I first started looking out of this, what I saw was a landscape of fragmentation. So if we look back to the past, what we had originally was 3 different entities in jackhenry.dev. We had a simple static HTML page for the .dev homepage that ironically nobody on the team knew how to edit or update. We had, Jaime had his digital solutions site, which had all the doc for the Bano stuff, digital toolkit, plugins, and all that. Mike had the enterprise solutions site, which had all the enterprise stuff like JExchange and all of that. Problem wasn't the content. The content was really stellar. I was always very impressed with the content. It was really more about the presentation, the consistency. And what we saw with these 3 different sites that we originally had was just a complete lack of consistency at any level. They all looked and felt differently. The information architecture was different. They didn't link to each other. Everything was completely siloed. So that's where we've come from. And what that created for you as a consumer of that documentation is cognitive load. Where's the information that I need? Which site is it? Where in that site is it? How do I find it? Oh, it's not in this site, let me come over here. Oh, everything looks different over here. So that lack of consistency was really creating cognitive load for you guys. And so the answer to that, when I kind of came into this and started looking at this, I thought, wow, we've got a lot of work to do here, was achieving consistency through something that we're calling JHDocs. And so my goal for jackhenry.dev since the very beginning was, as I looked at all that inconsistency, was to create a single, unified, cohesive user experience across all of this stock to make it easier for you to find the information that you need. And really, my guiding principle all along has been making jackhenry.dev meet you where you're at to get you the information that you need on the device that you need, when and where you need it, and in some cases in your language. So to do that, I mentioned earlier we had JHDocs, that's a technical documentation platform that we built on top of Hugo. The idea here was to create self-service technical documentation for the engineering teams. Because as we've been talking about all week, we've been on this huge push to get all of these APIs documented so you guys can start looking at this and start using this doc immediately. And so JHDocs was something that we needed across the organization. So the first thing I did was to treat it like a product. I packaged it up, and we started using that to power each one of these sites. So we basically have a JHDocs starter template GitHub repo, and any team at Jack Henry can go there and then clone off that repo and start adding their own doc immediately. So we try to make it packaged up as easy as possible to make it completely self-service. And the idea then is that actual engineers, unlike Sergio won't do it, but actual engineers can write their own doc. They don't have to go through a technical documentation person for that. So let's talk about some of the goodies that JHDocs has brought along the way for you guys. The first thing is complete responsiveness. That drove me nuts. I mean, I had my little checklist when I started looking there was no responsiveness. It was basically built for a desktop, laptop type system. But we have full responsiveness across desktop, laptop, tablet, and mobile. We know that developers aren't always sitting in front of those 3 massive monitors at home working like that. Sometimes you're in a coffee shop. Sometimes you might be in a meeting and need to look up some doc really fast. You might be in the back of a cab. So we wanted to make sure that you're able to use the device of your choice to access this documentation. The next thing was getting light and dark mode in place with the proper branding, because each of these sites look completely different. And a couple years ago, we went through the One Jack Henry branding initiative, and so we brought those colors into this. And while we did it, we added dark mode as well. So dark mode is not just an aesthetic choice, it's accessibility. Because developers, you're looking at a screen all day long. You don't want to be looking at that blinding white background there. There's too much contrast, too much eye strain. So this is an accessibility choice that we had to honor. The next thing was there was a lack of search. So you could go to each site and then dig through all of the pages and hopefully find what you're looking for. So when we added search, it was important that the search was federated across all of the sites. Because if we added just search for each site, okay, that's nice, but it's not here, let me go to that site and search. It's not there, let me go to that. That doesn't work. So it's completely federated. We use the page find search utility, and we're federating that. So every time you search, you're getting search results across all of these sites at once there. We also had to address the information architecture. So we had completely different navigation across all these different sites. So we have unified navigation at 3 levels. We have the navigation across sites, from site to site. That's the global navigation you can get to from that hamburger menu. We have the local navigation within each site. That's that left nav bar on the left there, which collapses down on mobile. And then we have a table of contents within each page, so that you can navigate to the content within each of those pages there. We've also added all kinds of really cool features for our engineering teams to use there. So these documentation sites are heavy on code samples, API information like that. So we have code blocks here with full syntax highlighting. We use Swagger UI. We've been seeing examples of that all week for visualizing APIs. So all of these doc sites have different APIs that we're providing for you, and we're giving you the same user experience across all of those using tools like Swagger UI, ASCII diagrams, all kinds of things that developers would want to use to surface their documentation there. So these are all really cool goodies that we were adding to JXDocs all along the way, but there was a broader architectural strategy behind all of this. So let's take a look at I'll step out of the way so you can see this here. As we look across all of these different sites, each one lives in its own GitHub repo. And so I'm only showing 3 of these here today. I've got the Authentication Framework, JExchange SOAP, and Digital Toolkit. Each has its own GitHub repo and potentially has its own group of people editing it. So this is really cool. So the people who manage Data Hub, Jeremy was this up a minute ago, his team manages the Data Hub doc. They don't need a tech writer for that. They just do that directly themselves. Jaime's team manages Digital Toolkit. content like that. But if we just were to have 16 different sites that didn't connect like that, we're still shipping our org chart. So this is where JHDocs provides that UX glue that wraps the whole thing up to look like one unified website for everything in there. So we've got consistent UI. You can see across these different screens, everything looks the same. Every time you navigate for the global navigation, we have a convention that anywhere that you land looks like a home page. We have a very convention for displaying all of that stuff. And we've got the, like we talked about, global nav, search, all of that just makes it feel like a single unified experience for you. But I always knew that we could do more than that. You know, these things that we've added just kind of got us up to par, I thought. You know, search, responsiveness, dark mode, and all that. We could do more. We could go further with it. And so our team, about 3 years ago, we had an internal hackathon at Jack Henry. Our team entered and won the Jack Henry internal hackathon with a project that we called Project Gnosis, which is about how can we look at providing more concierge treatment for you guys for getting the information that you need, meeting you where you're at. And so what we decided at that point in time was that we were going to start working on an AI Assist feature. And so we're very happy today to announce AI Assist is now available on jackhenry.dev and all of these documentation sites that's been turned on. So whenever you search in any jackhenry.dev site now, you're getting back both AI Assist results with the search results as well, with the keyword search results too. Why is that important? Why is AI Assist more important than keyword search? We've got it search, why don't we just stop there? Because there's a critical difference between keyword search and AI Assist. AI Assist understands what you're looking for. It understands your intent. Where keyword search understands what you typed in. If you have a typo, or you used the wrong word, or you used a word that's different than what we documented, keyword search is going to help you. But AI Assist understands your intent. So all of those 6,700 documents that are in jackhenry.dev are now in a RAG LLM AI database, a knowledge base out there. And JHDocs can talk to that now. Any JHDocs sites can talk to this LLM and provide AI Assist results. When I designed the user experience for AI Assist, I followed what Google does. So Google, they're the search experts, right? Why would you do anything different than what they're doing? They got it right. One simple box. You just type into that, you get all of your results from that one simple box. We don't need you having to think, do I want this? Do I want AI Assist? Do I want text? No, you just type into that one box. You're going to get both AI Assist results and keyword search results together. All right, so I've been talking about this a little while. Let's take a look at a demo of this. I'm going to go to the next slide. It's got a canned demo, a little video. I'm going to step out of the way and let you watch this that plays for a few minutes. But check this out. This is pretty remarkable.
Site. I'll focus the search box in the header. I'm going to enter a commonly asked question. What is the digital toolkit? Now look at the results page. You'll notice that we see an AI overview right at the top with the traditional keyword search results displayed below that. If you look at the keyword search results at the bottom, you'll see that they're kind of hit or miss. The first keyword search result is actually pretty far off base. This is because keyword search looks for documents that strictly contain the text you're searching for. We're using the page find search tool for this, which is a great tool, don't get me wrong, but there are limits to how effective keyword search can ever be. In contrast, when you look at the AI overview up top, you'll see exactly what you're looking for: a summary, a definition. This is because AI Assist actually understands what you're searching for, while keyword search does not. Okay, let's say I have a follow-up question. If I enter my follow-up question in the search box in the header, I'll kick off an entirely new AI Assist session. But I want to maintain the context. I want to continue with this current session. So to do that, I'll press the Continue this AI Conversation button. And now we transition from search to chat. I'll enter, tell me more about the authentication framework. And we're going to get an answer to that question within the context of this current session. Beautiful. Notice the little numbers interspersed in the AI overview contents? These are citation links. Trust is important here. You can click on any of these numbers to access the underlying documentation that the answer was pulled from, so you can verify the source. Let's keep the conversation going. I'm going to ask something a little more fun now. How are access tokens used in the authentication framework? Say I need to know more about that within the context of the authentication framework. And we're going to see an answer that is fully aware of the context of our conversation so far. All right, let's mix it up a little bit. Let's say that I'm reading about access tokens, but for some reason it's just not landing for me. I'm going to ask it to explain access tokens to me like I'm 10 years old. And we get a really fun answer here, written at a level that even I can understand. It's talking about going to an amusement park and getting tickets to get on the rides. So it answered my question about what access tokens are as if I were 10 years old. That is really cool. All right, now let's switch gears. I mentioned earlier that it's important that jackhenry.dev meet you where you're at. The following examples help illustrate how AI is helping us accomplish this in ways we never thought possible. I'm going to go up to the top here, start a new AI Assist question, a new session here, and ask, how do I sign up for a developer account? And we get our results. Let's say I want to go deeper. I'm going to continue in conversational mode here. I'm then going to ask, how do I sign up for a developer account? Please respond entirely in Spanish. And look at that. We see the results in Spanish. Let's run that through Google Translate. Grab a couple lines here.
I think the audio is lagging a little, or it's a little ahead.
And we can see we're getting valid answers in Spanish. Okay, next, let's ask a follow-up question in Spanish. I'm going to ask it, what if I don't have a valid US phone number in Spanish? And we get an answer in Spanish. We're now having a conversation in Spanish with documentation that was written entirely in English. Let's try another one. Let's say, how do I sign up for a developer account? Please respond entirely in Hindi. Wow. Let's run this through the translator and see what we get. We can see that we got a valid answer in Hindi from documentation that is written entirely in English. Anybody here speak Russian? That's Russian. Now, to be clear, the assignment was never to have a way to translate all of our documentation into any language. But my goal here is to help illustrate how AI, when carefully applied, can help us meet you where you're at. That's the goal.
Pretty cool. So, how does all this work behind the scenes? Let's take a look at that. All of our documentation is written in Markdown. I'm assuming most people in here know what Markdown is. It's a markup language that has very minimal characters in it. If you want to bold something, you put asterisks around it. It's a very sparse language versus HTML, which is a very verbose language. So all of the documentation is authored in Markdown across all of these different repos. And every time anyone on the team commits any of this stuff to the repo, a GitHub workflow runs. It looks at what's changed in that commit, what was added, what was changed, what was deleted, and it syncs that up with the AI knowledge base. So that way the AI is always up to date with what's going on. And that's a self-healing GitHub workflow too. So if there was a problem with GitHub or whatever, you can rerun it again and it will catch that. So that's what it's doing behind the scenes. But that's not the only use case. That's not the only way that we're using AI to power Jack Henry today. I'm going to go through a couple more use cases for you. One is something that I've heard a couple people in the room are very excited about. That is automated change logs. I don't know if you want to do a shout out. Okay, all right, somebody's happy about that. Mike approached me a few months ago about getting an automated changelog feature added to JStocks. And at the time, I was pretty AI skeptical. I didn't think that AI could do this. And so my first run at this was very developer heavy, relied on the developers, the people authoring the content to actually provide good conventional comments and stuff like that that would be readable in a changelog. And it wasn't good enough. And we talked about it. So I went back to the drawing board, and this time embedded AI. And so I swear, in the last 6 months, I have completely done a turnaround in AI. I love AI now. It's completely transformed the way I work. It's transformed the way I live. I am a convert. And so I'm really excited about the concept of embedding intelligence components into traditional workflows. And that's what we did here. I call it a spark, just a little gear of intelligence that does one thing and does it really, really well. And that's what we did here. So for the changelog feature, anytime anyone commits a change to one of the repos, a GitHub repo kicks off on that commit to the main branch. That GitHub repo takes a snapshot of the change, so the additions, the changes, and the deletions, and it sends that to that git diff. It sends that to our intelligence component. And we have a changelog curator set up in there that will look at that git diff, and it has one job to do. It actually has two jobs to do. It has to look at that git diff and say, does this go in the changelog or not? Because a lot of the changes that we commit to these repos are kind of chore type things, like I might be updating JStocks in a repo, or dependapot updates that are updating dependencies. Things like that doesn't need to go in a changelog. You don't want to read about that stuff. So the changelog curator, little nugget of intelligence, will look at that git diff and decide whether it goes into the changelog or not. And if it does, it writes the changelog entry for us. I was so skeptical of that at first. I said that'll never work. And it does an amazing job. So here's an example of one of the changelog pages. So this page here, not a word of that was written by a human. That was all written by AI automatically from a GitHub workflow for us. So no one ever has to touch a changelog. Nobody likes writing changelogs, and they don't have to now. Another use case for AI that we're using for jackhenry.dev is data transformation. So we have, in those 6,700 documents, ask me how I know this, there are 4,406 little spots in there, I know that the hard way, where we have data coming from other teams in various formats that gets turned into actual content that you can read as human readable content. And that data comes to us in Excel spreadsheets, JSON files. There are full HTML documents that come to us from tech writers that we have to embed into the middle of the markdown. I call that the turducken approach because we're stuffing HTML inside of markdown. I hate that, but we have to do that. So all of this data comes from these different teams like that, but we need to turn that into actual content. So how are we doing that? Today, I maintain a awful monster node-based transformation utility that I hate that thing because it's traditional development. It's very brittle. This content up here, sometimes someone on the team that sends it to us decides to put in a new column in there, or they'll change one of the names of the column headers, and it just breaks the whole thing, and I get a call. Because it's brittle. It's traditional development. But the cool thing is, I want to replace all of that with AI. Because data transformation is a superpower for large language models. It can understand these changes with a prompt way better than a brittle piece of node software could do. So this is another thing that we're going to be looking at in the very near future for Jack Henry as well. So it makes me really happy and excited to stand before you today, 5 years later. I've been on a journey for 5 years working on this stuff to see where we are with all this, how far we've come from these small siloed sites that didn't talk to each other to adding JStocks and now adding AI Assist. I wanted to mention a couple of things related to all of this. I do want to be transparent about the AI Assist. This is brand new. We've just got this pulled together. All of the infrastructure is good, but the knowledge base itself still needs a little bit of work. So go ahead and start hitting it, start asking your questions. You're going to get good results today, but not great yet. There's been some changes we've made to the knowledge base recently related to all of that external content that we're getting and shoving into it. Turns out adding lots and lots of HTML, which is very verbose, into a bunch of Markdown kind of changes the center of gravity for the whole thing a little bit. And it's tilted the answers we're getting a little. So what I'm going to be working on over the next few weeks is removing all those HTML tokens and getting us back to a little bit more centered knowledge base. So you're going to get good results today. You're going to be getting great results in a few weeks. The other thing I really want to leave you with here, and what makes me the most excited about this, is that whole idea of having a conversation with documentation, which just still blows my mind. All of these examples, I was just poking around and trying, like, what can I do with this? What are the edges of all of this? Last night, Mike and I were talking about we're going to bring another team on to the jackhenry.dev documentation, and they were expressing displeasure at being at the end of the list in the navigation. Everyone wants to be at the front of that list. And as we talked about it, I realized that when you get into conversational mode with this documentation, traditional information architecture, like these lists of links and things like that, just kind of doesn't even matter anymore. If you're just talking to it, you're having a conversation with it. You just ask what you want to ask and learn what you need to learn by directly talking with this. So I think that is a huge, huge promise for the future for what we're doing.
All right, thank you so much, Jim.
Yeah.
So Amanda, how do we do? So at our first DevCon, Amanda asked a question at a QA session about why we didn't have there were so many changes all the time, which in one way is a very good thing because it's a very active site. We contribute content every single day in some manner. She's like, I can't keep up with what's new. And so we took that very seriously, and it took us a while to figure out a solution that was elegant enough for us to implement. And we kind of had to wait for the tools to catch up with our ideas. So we hope you like it. There is a changelog for every doc site out there. So like Jim said, it's not one big giant site. It's a collection of multiple doc sites. And so everyone has its own changelog. So you don't have to put them all together. So we hope you like that. I hope you see that we're very intentional about documentation. We're not throwing up the proverbial PDF. We are continuing to push forward and continue to innovate even on this product. We have a lot of ideas of things that we want to roll out. It's just going to take some time and some research, and we'll get there. Gemini, it's an AI. Don't be concerned about hallucinations. Together, we have 68 years at Jack Henry. And the reason that's important is, one, we both know how to use a rotary dial telephone for when the zombie apocalypse hits. So we'll be ready.
JetX to the rescue.
Yeah. And the other part of that is that we have been around Jack Henry for a very long time, and it has always been a spectacular company. I don't know that I ever recall a downturn necessarily, but we were talking the other night, and we have never been more excited about what we're doing, what we're building, and where we're going, and we hope you are too. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.